So this is what I'm making today, a silver cover for my Bic lighter. So it's a disposable, so you can replace it. The material I'm using is fine silver. I mistakenly told you at one time that fine silver doesn't oxidize. It does, but a lot slower than sterling. But it doesn't have fire scale, is what I meant to say. So there's no copper in this, it's just pure silver, and the copper is what gives you fire scale. So the tarnish that's on here will come off. I need to heat this up to anneal it to be able to put my marks in it. And we do that just by heating it until it's a dull red. The dimensions are 0.5 thick, and the length to go around the lighter is 65.5 millimeters, and the height is 68 millimeters. Well, you can see it doesn't come all the way up, but I don't want it to come all the way up. I'm quite happy with it being slightly down. Less work. Now, I got the dimensions by going around by just using a piece of wire. I wrapped a piece of wire around, twisted it, got the exact fit, cut it, opened it up for length, and that was how I got my dimensions, because it's not a perfect oval. A perfect oval, you would be able to just add the length plus the width, divide by 2, and multiply by 3.14, and that would give you the length. It doesn't work on this lighter. I'm just going to hold my material on a bench anvil, and I got a little bit of a theme happening here on this one. What I want are footsteps going around the bottom, and I've got left and right. And be sure that you get, if you're making a specific pattern, the width will be slightly less than the height. So just make sure you get that right. And the bottom is going to be slightly folded in, so make sure that you leave enough room to fold it in. A bit like dinosaur footprints. Now, this is going to tell a little bit of a story. So I've got the footprints across the bottom, and in all primitive cave art, petroglyphs, there are always hand marks, and usually it's just one hand, but I have a left and a right, so I'm going to and then we've got stars. So stars for the outside. And then a little bit of star shine. So I'm just going to use this part of my jeweler's hammer to start at the middle. For a little burst. So there's my pattern so far. Now we need to hallmark it while it's flat, because once it's curved around, it's almost impossible to hallmark. So we'll do that now. Then, because I've work hardened it with all of the marks, we'll anneal it again and then wrap it around so that the edges fit together and solder it. Now, if you hit the edge of this when you were putting your pattern in, you need to file it flat at this point. I only have one spot. So that's good. One spot on this side. And we'll anneal it. So now this is annealed, it's nice and soft, and I'm just going to hold the metal on the lighter and I'm going to push it around it. Now I usually put the seam at the end, so we'll do that. And you can see just by rolling it back and forth, it's really close. And I'll switch ends and we'll do it again. We want to get this so that it's touching perfectly. We could wrap a piece of binding wire around it, but I find that the binding wire oftentimes leaves a mark. I don't want a mark. So we'll just work with this until the edges are touching each other. You can use an old lighter if you want. You can use a new lighter. It doesn't really make any difference. Close. And I'll do the rest with my fingers. So you can see we're pretty close already. It's the right shape. So we just want to play with this until we get the ends so that they touch perfectly. You can do it a bit like a jump ring. You can push it past itself. And oftentimes I'll use a burnisher just to smooth the edge to make sure it's nice and flat. Flat against the other piece. Then we can open it just a little and it should click into place. Like that. So check, make sure that the edges are touching perfectly. And if you have it so that the majority of it is touching and ready to solder and one's slightly open, don't worry about it. We'll solder what we can solder, and then we'll come back. Once that's soldered, then we'll push this together and solder it. So I'm pretty happy with that. So I have the joint down, and mix up your flux if you haven't. Make sure it's nice and creamy, and just run a line down the inside. I'm not putting any on the outside. And the very end isn't together, so I'm not putting flux on that. So we don't have to worry about that bit getting solder in it, so we can't push it together later. So I'm going to take 3 large pieces of solder, which is 4 millimeters long, and I'm just going to lay it in the seam. As long as it's touching both sides of the metal, we're fine. Now, what I'm going to do is just get my neutral flame, and I'm going to just heat the seam, running it back and forth. the flux will dry out, go clear, and then the solder will flow. And as it flows, I'll work my flame down so that we run all the way down along the seam. So that flowed. I've gone to the next one. So that one flowed. Looking good. And now the one on the other end. So that one flowed. So I'm quite happy with that. Now, we'll quench it, push the part together that isn't together, and I can see a nice meniscus all the way down to there, and then I'll push this together and we'll solder it. So we don't have to do anything to the rest of this seam.